Hello, everyone, and a very good day, good evening, good afternoon, based on wherever you're tuning in from. This is the fourth episode of Run to Life, and we are going to be discussing more about the latest Kubernetes version with its release lead, Priyanka Saggu. I will be joined by her in a little bit. But before that, I would like to set some ground rules for this entire session. So, we are all here to learn and interact with each other around technology, right? So I'd like to request everyone who's tuning in to actually be nice to one another and be courteous to one another, and refrain from the use of any abusive or harmful language. Secondly, with respect to ground rules for this session, please leave any comments or questions that you have for Priyanka with regards to the release process or with regards to any of the things that we're talking about in the chat section. So I'm aware that all of the platforms that we are streaming on might not have a chat section. So YouTube, Twitch, and LinkedIn do have that. So please feel free to leave your questions, and we will get to them during the course of the presentation or after the presentation slash session. So, without further ado, I would like to bring on Priyanka, and have her introduce herself because I'd love to sort of hear what she's been up to since the past couple of months after the release. Hi, Priyanka.
Hey, hello, and thank you for inviting me, Divya. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone.
Yeah.
My name is Priyanka Saggu. I work at SUSE with Divya, but in a different department, BCL. I work at SUSE as a Kubernetes integration engineer in the business critical Linux department. I was the release lead for Kubernetes 1.29 and have been on the release team in past for 6 cycles starting from 123. I'm also a technical lead for special interest group contributor experience and one of the GitHub admins for Kubernetes and sub-project organizations. Um, yeah, that's about me.
And we're so glad that you could find the time to chat with us about the release 1 month. I think it's been a month and 3 days after the release, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe I'm getting my timelines wrong, but it's definitely been a month since the release has happened. And this probably might be looking like stale content that's popping up on your feed, but rest assured, it's not. And we're going to have a pretty interesting discussion lined up today, hopefully peppered with your questions. So, um, right. So, first up, we are going to cover the highlights of the release because, like it or not, the release did feature some pretty spectacular highlights. Um, so, Priyanka, do you want to talk about some deprecations and any major feature enhancements that you'd particularly like our viewers to take note of?
So I think like I can start with a big major one. This is not a deprecation, but I would say this is towards that side, a removal and a deprecation. So I'm talking about cloud provider integration removal. This affects users, so that is why we are talking about it. Very briefly, anybody who runs Kubernetes on a cloud provider, for example, AWS, Azure, GC, vSphere, and any other. This is for those people so who uses Kubernetes on cloud provider platform, and it specifically impacts the people who are running Kubernetes on these three cloud providers, Azure, GC, or vSphere, and they are looking forward to, let's say, upgrade their clusters from 128 onwards. So for them, please look for a blog post that came right next date, the day next to our release date, that gives you all the guidelines and remediations on what you need to do. What is happening is we starting from 129, um, the we have changed a few feature flags that now renders these core components of Kubernetes like kube API, server controller manager, and scheduler to no longer understand the inbuilt, the code, the integration code for cloud provider that was written inside the Kubernetes code base. So with starting from 129, Kubernetes on its own would not understand any of those cloud provider flags that you pass, and you need to do something externally. You need to start using external cloud provider controllers to start integrating with any of the cloud providers. Sorry, not any, the three ones, Azure, GCE, and vSphere. For any other, it does not impact because they were never in, like, in the first place, they were never in the Kubernetes code base. So it won't affect them. So that is a major change coming up. And give me a second, I'll put a link to the blog right away if you want to add it.
Yeah, I
Um,
actually do have it. It's the
okay.
cloud provider integration changes, right? That's the one that came out
Yep.
on
Yep.
14th December. Yep,
Perfect.
I have put it on here. And for those who are on the chat, they can see this. We will be linking this in our description as well after the session gets over, of course.
Okay. And just trying to wrap it up with one last note. This is starting. The change is starting in 129. So, uh, but so there is still a way if you don't upgrade to, let's say, 129, and if you want to disable those flags again, this will fall back to how it used to work before 129. But that option of falling back, backward compatibility will also go away in future releases. So please read that blog and take the remediation steps, and yeah, and prepare yourself for next releases. That's, I think that's the major one that came out of 129. There are other very great alpha features. I can talk about another one. um, it's in place pod updates. This is one of the features I believe that's most anticipated. I think the conversation started during 117. um, I can I think I can find out issues starting from 2015 on Kubernetes repo. Very shortly, it allows you to do what, or it is starting up towards enabling us for vertical port scaling. So what it means is that it helps us to make our port spec mutable. So if, for example, without restarting our ports, if we want to change resources like CPU or memory, if you want to give more CPU or more memory resources, or if you want to take some back, if our ports are not running on high demand, we can do that with this particular feature. Um, Without restarting our board. So that is what is happening with this particular feature. If you want to read more about what's coming in the future releases, the cap is 1287. So look for more details there. Um, yeah, this is alpha right now. This is gated. You need to use the flag. It's gated feature, so you need to enable the feature flag to start using it. That's what I
Yep.
recall. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm going to link the enhancement issue right on here for those who are interested in checking out more about, this particular alpha feature. And any other deprecations or any other enhancements that you'd like to talk about, Priyanka?
Um, so I think we do not have more deprecations. I'm no no I think we had 49, so that's a big number. 49
Yeah,
enhancements came in 129. I think I can talk about a few stable ones that came out. The one we discussed was alpha. So
yeah,
I think one is coming from storage side, which is read write one port. This is a new
yep,
access mode that's going GA this cycle. So the I think this was introduced for the very first time in 122. And I believe it was beta in 125 or 127, and now it's going GA. Um, Very simply, this new access mode allows you to restrict access of your volumes, persistent volumes, to just one port in a cluster. So that is uh, what this feature does, and this is going GA in 129, so you can use it by default. Other than that, I think there is another very interesting one. which is node volume expansion secret support for CSI drivers. I think this is also something that's there, that started like in 125. That was alpha in 125, and then it was beta in 127, I believe, and now it's going GA. This feature allows us to pass phrases in very simple words. Like if I have a node running, or if I want to expand my volume, persistent volumes or PCs, right? Uh, and those volumes, let's say, are in one cases they are password protected, they are lux
Yep.
encrypted, and I have to pass that password or that secret credentials. Now that this feature allows me to do that, this feature allows me to provide that secret as an optional parameter to my node expansion, volume expansion request. So that is what is becoming stable or a GA feature this cycle. I think that's what I recall. If you want to highlight or talk about anything, just let me know.
No, I don't have anything in particular. I just wanted to, see if there are some interesting things that you could provide insight to from a release perspective, like I said, features of Node and enhancements of Node. That's not a problem if we can't go through them all, because we still have a very um a lot of ground to cover with respect to the release process in itself, because as we know, a lot of people tuning in might not really be Kubernetes contributors and might not really have insight into how the release process actually works. So, do you want to like give an insight into how it actually all comes together and how you get like a version out of the door in 3 months or less?
Okay.
Mostly
Yeah,
just 3 months.
yeah. I think this is 3 months, and which is also I'm surprised how people used to do more than in even lesser times. So we there was a time when we used to have 4 releases in a year. Um, so at this point, we have 3 releases, 3 Kubernetes upstream releases every year, and I would say I would divide them in 4 months each cycle at this point, starting from assembling a team that is going to work for this period of 3 months or 3.5 months if we end up having, let's say, blockers. um, so this starts with an application, this starts with a shadow application that is open to everybody, not just people in the Kubernetes community, but to people who are maybe, let's say, willing to join the Kubernetes community or start their contribution journey to the Kubernetes project. We start with an application, and that application is to assemble a team of shadows. So we usually every cycle we have a team of 40 shadows uh, that we assemble under different sub teams of release team, and the work ranges from helping us with tracking enhancements, what all new features we are going to work on, the community is going to work on, documentation, helping us with release notes, helping us with all the communications that's going to go out throughout the release cycle and after that, and other things like helping us with our CI signals, or providing us all the required signal that we need during throughout the arts release cycle. So we have all these responsibilities divided into different sub teams in our release team sub project, and w- we try to get shadow applications for all these roles. Some of the shadows are actually returnees, so they have already shadowed on the previous release cycles, and they maybe are trying to come back and try on a different role, or maybe continue on a different on the same role to become, uh, let's say, grow up
Leads,
further.
yeah.
And like we definitely invite new people who have no prior contributions to Kubernetes, and they just want to get started with a proper mentor mentee setup where they can get guidance. So the applications start usually around the conclusion of a previous cycle. For example, January, I don't know, it's January 18th or January 14th, or I don't know, sometime this last week we started with 130 release. So the shadow applications for 130 release cycle was started sometime in the last week of December.
Yep.
Yeah. So once we have the team, we start with the very first thing we need. Uh, Data on what are we going to work on during the entire cycle. That starts with enhancements. So we have this enhancements opt-in process for the community, where community opt-in, uh, these are the enhancements they are going to work on during this 4 months 3 months period. And followed by that, we have different milestones, like whether all the enhancements that are opting in, are they meeting a certain requirements that are necessary to be opted in. Um, Followed by that, once we have a list of what enhancements are going to be uh, worked on in a particular cycle, all this different teams work kicks in, like documentation. Now docs team, the release docs team is going to go over to the all the authors to start working on their documentation, while the authors are also working on implementing code. So a lot of work starts after we are past the enhancements tracking period. Um, Once we have code implemented, which is actually marked at the code freeze, we have different other milestones that comes in: docs freeze and test freeze, and uh, till the time we have everything that's like frozen on our KK master and KK release branch. Uh, we do different release cuts, like we have alpha cuts in the in the middle, at different times, various alpha cuts. I think we had three this cycle, followed by beta, and then finally, once we have frozen everything on KK master, we start with our release candidates. So, and then I think this cycle we had two release candidates. Because of a few delays, and then followed by that we finally have the release. So that's how it is, briefly structured. There are more details, and we have role handbooks, and more documentation on how the release team actually works, in, I would
Yep.
say, github.com/sig release.
Don't worry, already linked them in the comments as you were speaking. The role handbooks, the graphical description of the release team, and more about the responsibilities that come with being a shadow on the release team. Fun fact, you do have to start out as a shadow. You cannot directly be starting out as a lead or even the release team lead. It comes with, trust building. You have to um, actually, if I were to say, if you have to actually do the job before being considered for the job. So I know that's a very toxic, probably toxic thing to say, but essentially you have to take on the responsibility and understand what the responsibility entails in terms of the work that comes along with being a lead, or work that comes along with being a release lead for that matter. And starting the cycle, if I'm not mistaken, we had the um, release signal vertical coming up. Is that right, or am
um,
I mistaken there?
yeah, so that's a change coming in this cycle, which
Yep.
has just started in 130.
Yep.
uh,
Yep.
this is a structural change in the release team. Basically, we had five sub teams under the release team before, let's say till 129. um, and now we are merging two of those teams, those sub teams, into a single team called release signal. The teams I'm talking about is CI signal and bug triage. So we are
Yep.
merging bug triage and CI signal to a new team called release signal. The reasoning behind is most of the work that these two teams does at different phases of the release cycle. Uh, they very much collide with each other, and I think, like, based on feedback from previous release leads and previous role leads, uh, what we felt was, if we can bring this workforce, all these resources together, and work on automating or improving the processes better under a single sub team, that's going to be more helpful. So yeah, that change is coming. I think this was requested, or I'd say wanted, a very much like anticipated change in for starting from 127, but
Yep.
we did lack a lot of documentation to for the role itself. So that documentation actually went in 129, and it's now in place. Like the role is this that integration has happened in 130. Yep. So that's most of a
Right.
structural change. Does not change much on the working side of the release itself.
Absolutely. But it is a change nevertheless, like at least from the procedural side of things. And speaking about changes that are not necessarily related to the release, but are pretty important from a community perspective. I believe this is required to be said, although it's highlighted across socials, and we also have a blog around it, that we're moving away from the legacy Linux packages. And if you are still using those, we really 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 need you to move away from those. I will link the blog related to that and how you can find more information related to that move, and related to making your transition easier in light of this move, in the comments, as well as the you know event description. But I think this is also one of the first release that we have cut, built and packaged rather, um, with I think the SUSE OBS, if I'm not mistaken. Are we is it this the
Yeah.
first one or the second one?
Okay, so yeah, I think this is second one, but
Yeah.
first one, and so second one in a way that we started using OpenSUSE OBS um, as part of a POC or just testing in 128. We just used that for I think a few alpha cuts. We did not
Yep.
use it for the final RC cuts and the actual release. But for 129, right away, starting from all the alpha cuts, we have used OpenSUSE OBS or Open Build Service for building all our packages. So yeah, that way it's the first release. Um, just giving a brief, the change is basically on the lines that I think before one I don't know the exact date, so I'll not quote them. Um, I think let's say a year back, the community SIG release people, release engineering sub project under SIG release, they started with the POC to start moving to a more community owned build infrastructure to build our Kubernetes upstream packages. Earlier, we used to have our build tooling on Google Cloud Platform using the Cloud Build tooling, but that was very much restricted to a few people in the release engineering group. We called them release managers, as well as we needed help from Googlers. So we needed
Yep.
help from Google employees, and that was a lot of overhead on the employees itself. Also, the tooling was not very much maintained at that point, and uh, because of all the different restrictions, we could not pass down a lot of like that knowledge to people widely in the community. So that was a requirement to move to a more community owned infrastructure, and
Yep.
that's where SUSE offered us sponsored us to move our build tooling to OpenSUSE OBS.
Open source OBS.
We did ran a POC, and that was successful. And as a result of that, I think in 128 we did tested cutting alpha releases on OBS. Um, and in 129 I think all went well. There were a few hiccups because again we just moved from the POC state to start using it as our regular our major main um, tooling itself. But since there were a few people who had just started working on building all the toolings or integrating OBS libraries and CLIs into our already existing tools. So there is still time for us to build that documentation and build that knowledge base, so that more people can troubleshoot problems when they come. So we did face some issues this cycle where uh, people who had more context were not available in, let's say, in that time zone, and we had to wait for them to come, and that delayed a few releases. But for us, very fortunately, that happened in the, let's say, alpha 3 or beta 1 cut. So we were very much prepared for our later, like final RC cut. So all went well. Uh, that right away like helped us to build our documentation and at least gave us more reasons to start doing it uh,
Yep.
quickly, and hopefully that will make it easier for us in 130 and onwards.
Yeah, hopefully that does make it easier for the folks ahead. And I believe you do um have like the responsibilities of packaging Kubernetes and the Linux distributions at your day job here at SUSE as well. So could you talk a little
Yeah,
more
yeah.
to that?
Yeah, actually, like in SUSE, and if I talk about the open source side of it, OpenSUSE and OpenSUSE Tumbleweed and OpenSUSE Leap distributions, we use, I think OBS is meant for that, those distributions,
Yeah.
like as a core build service. And um, not just these, I would say like everybody who just want an open build service,
Hmm.
we do use OBS for finding like packages if if we are not finding
Correct.
them, let's say from our package managers. Specifically for OpenSUSE, we build our entire distribution packages on OBS itself. Same is for Leap. Also for SLE, we have this SLE. I'm talking about the SUSE and Linux Enterprise. We have this factory first policy, which means if uh, we are building packages for our enterprise product, first they need to land in uh, a factory, which is a project again on open build service itself. So I think everybody in SUSE who works on package management, and they use OBS day in and day out. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that all of that experience that you have at your day job translated, to probably helping out a little bit, if not a lot, during the release process.
Yes, actually, well, I would not take away any credit from the people who worked on the POC because I was not part of SUSE at
Absolutely.
that time.
Yes.
But yes, definitely I had context because of what I do at my day job. I was also able to at least maybe provide more information, if not all the information when we were missing the people. Um, but rest ahead, I think like there are a lot of people from SUSE who had provided a lot of help to the Kubernetes
Context.
community
Yes.
when we were just onboarding uh, the whole tooling, when we were trying to understand how we can utilize OBS better, how because for Kubernetes it's a lot of disruption when we move from uh, platforms,
Once.
let's say.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that POC was a long time duration, and I know a lot of people from SUSE provided a lot of help. So big shout out to everyone from SUSE um, who helped us and made this transition actually possible. Yeah.
Yeah. And also for those who are wondering whether, any of the Kubernetes distributions offered by us are supporting 1.29. If you've not tuned into socials, or if you've actually not gotten off the holiday fervor yet, we are actually offering it on both of our distributions, which is K3S and RKE2. And this actually was done surprisingly lightning fast before the holiday season. So if you do want to play around a little bit with version 1.29 of Kubernetes, you can definitely leverage RK2 or K3S as well to see if that fits your use case, or you want to actually use it for your workload or whatever. But I think we're pretty much at the end of our discussion, Priyanka. But I'd like to ask you one last question. You spoke at length about the release and about the release team, and about the Kubernetes community in general. So I'd like to ask you, how could somebody potentially get involved in the release process, like as a shadow? You did mention that. there is an application going out, where can somebody actually find out more about this application? Because I'm pretty sure it's not actually available on social media platforms except Twitter.
Ye-
So yeah.
Okay, yeah, I was not sure. Like we do post it on Twitter
Yeah.
from the project, but okay, two things I want to talk about. But I'll start with answering the question where to find out the shadow application form. So the first thing is to subscribe to the dev mailing list. There is a mailing list, Kubernetes dev at the rate kubernetes.io. Subscribe to that, and you will get regular updates on what's happening in our during a release cycle, as well as when we are uh, look at the, I think, milestone or a phase where we are working on assembling a new team. uh, that is usually announced by the emeritus advisor of the new release, so look for those emails. Also, you can join Kubernetes Slack. That would be slack.ktos.io, and especially join hashtag sig release, and these kind of notification about when release team shadow application starts, they are posted on those channels as well. um, Other than that, I think Kubernetes SIG release would be another mailing list if you want to join, but dev and SIG release channel on Kubernetes Slack would be the place where you will find out any information about a release cycle. Um, but just to answer the broader question, if how can somebody maybe like participate in a release in general, uh, right now, for example, in 130, if we talk about 130 release cycle, the shadow applications are already concluded. We already have a team that's going to be announced, I think, in a week or so. You can still contribute, you can still join all our release team meetings and learn about the processes, or wherever there is help needed, you can offer your contribution. So look for the release team calendar and you will get invites to all those weekly release team meetings. Other than that, also join the SIG release weekly meetings, because there is a lot of work that goes into the release cycle itself, or let's say building a Kubernetes release, which is very much outside the Kubernetes release team shadow program.
Yep.
Um, so I'm talking about, let's say, release engineering, the people who actually cut the releases, not the people who shepherd all the work. Um, so you can participate into release engineering program. You can help us build the tooling. You can make help us improve the release tooling. So all those conversations happen in SIG release weekly meetings. So join the SIG release mailing list for those invites. So yeah, uh,
Yep.
what I want to say is we have a very limited number of positions. So that's not the only way to participate in
Contribute.
release if
Yeah.
you are not getting selected. Um, just join SIG release group in general, and there are a lot of other opportunities to uh, contribute to the Kubernetes releases.
And if I
Thank
may add, yeah, just like a little bit, so that I can like bring in more contributors to docs. And I'm going to try pushing
I
that
was
agenda
going to
wherever
talk about
possible.
that. Yeah,
I'm gonna try pushing that agenda wherever possible. But essentially, docs are documentation are a really is a really important part of the release. And while you may not be a part of the release docs team in actually getting the docs in place, or you may not actually write the docs, we do value your technical input. We do value any qualitative input that you can give to better our docs and to better the kind of content that gets published in our docs or blogs. Informal reviews are appreciated, and we're always looking to grow our contributor pool, because I've noticed that projects tend to do better when they have great documentation, and this might be just a bias because I maintain the docs. But essentially, I think if you're interested in contributing, please step in into either of the release Slack, into either of the channels for sig release, sig docs, and if you're interested, you just need to sort of let your intentions be known and join the community calls for each of these groups. We're always welcoming new contributors and broader perspectives. So that's pretty much it. And I think that covers it. Yes, Priyanka. And
Yeah,
we
I think
don't
I'll
have any
just.
other area of the project. Do you want to plug in Contribix as well by any
Oh,
chance?
I was going to say that yes, maybe like if, but before that, like I want to plus one on what you just said, docs and comms, especially which the teams from the release team sub project that work on getting the docs out in time and getting all the post release blogs out in time, they
Yeah,
always suffer just because lack of reviews. We do not get
yeah,
reviews in time. Uh,
yeah,
that there, I do not blame anyone. This is a lot of work that goes into writing documentation, writing blogs, uh, and we suffer because of time. So if you can help us with those blogs, with those documentation, uh, that's the best thing. Because I from like uh, my experience as a release lead can very much say, if I do not have the documentation, if I do not have all these post release blogs, I would not be able to use the features that are coming out of a release. It's very hard for a non technical person, or somebody who is not very much like involved into the feature implementation, to
process.
understand how to start using that feature that has just come out. So for you are helping the project, I think, more than anybody. If you are helping people, the project, writing docs and improving docs, or even reviewing them, informal reviews, again, those are very very important. So documentation plus one. Comms, yes, we comms is another sub project that's under sig contribix. So if you want to help with communications, with any sort of communication, it could be on socials, it could be through blogs. um, there is another platform under sig contribix. If you want to join that, uh, to join the sig contribix mailing list. But I would say contribix is generally the starting point where you can even ask any questions about how to transition, how to go to other sigs. So feel free to just join sig contribix, and maybe ask around anything that you would like to learn about the project, and you can get all those resources. Any place in the project is important, I would say. So yeah, if you are
Absolutely.
interested, just show your interest, join the meetings, uh,
Yeah.
let people know and offer your help. Yeah.
Absolutely. And on that note, I think I will close this session out. Thank you so much, Priyanka, for taking our time, like I said. And it's been a pleasure chatting with you. And for all those that are tuning in, irrespective of wherever you're tuning in from, we will be leaving the description, not description, we'll be leaving the links that Priyanka and I spoke about, whether it's the blog, whether it's the Slack channel inviter or whatever else, in the descriptions of the event on LinkedIn, and in the descriptions of the YouTube and Twitch live. So should not be a problem, and hopefully y'all will be able to make meaningful contributions to the Kubernetes and the cloud native community in this year, if that's your resolution. So thank you once again, Priyanka, and to the rest of everyone and Priyanka, have a great day slash eve ahead. We'll see you around in the next stream. Bye.
Bye everyone, have a good day.